Welcome back to the Rock and Blues Experience, and coming up on this edition of the show, Thunder's Luke Morley joins me to talk about the excellent new solo album he's just released. It is called Walking on Water. We look ahead to the solo tour upcoming, and we'll get the latest updates on what's happening with Thunder. Now, when you sit down with musicians and artists and the subject of who were your influences arises, for many, if not most, those who grew up in the 50s and 60s in particular, it was all about seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show on a Sunday evening. If you happen to be really lucky, like Greg T. Walker of Southern rock icons Blackfoot, it was actually seeing the Beatles live as he did 60 years ago on September 11 of 1964 at the Gator Bowl Stadium, Jacksonville, on what was the Beatles' first ever North American tour. You were at the Gator Bowl Stadium, September the 11th, 1964. To see the Beatles. What do you remember, if anything, about that day? I mean, obviously there was the controversy around it about the segregation issue, and the Beatles said they wouldn't play unless there was none. And it was also, I didn't know this, it was the day after a huge hurricane. So Ringo's kit literally was nailed to the stage. But what do you remember about what was obviously an amazing day?
I was reminded of that segregation issue recently, but I don't remember that being an issue. Probably wasn't old enough to understand it anyway. I can tell you that looking down at that stage and all the screaming girls around, I don't know how many tens of thousands of people were there. It was total pandemonium. All you could hear was screaming. You couldn't hear a damn note or a word that the Beatles played and sang. It was just great. And I just remember looking down at that stage, and the girl I took with me, I think I mowed yards to buy those tickets. They were $5 a piece. That was a lot of money, when you're like 12 years old. And I said, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And she said, what? And I kept pointing to the stage. I said, that. Because what is that? I said, that. Be in a band like that. And she says, you've been in a band since you were 10, with Ricky and Jackson. I said, I know, but I want to be that, meaning big time as a career. And, 20 years after graduation, she sent me a note and she said, you stuck to your goals and you achieved it. When everybody else wanted to go to college, they said, what are you going to do? And I said, play in a band. It's all I've ever done. I have no desire to get a degree in anything, though I did years later. I just did that because I wanted to learn other things about, life. But what a life-changing moment. I've got a clock over here with a friend made me with a vinyl. The bottom half is a real vinyl record, and it's got a little plaque and a head. Yeah, it's a special gift. Yeah, huge Beatles fan, number one.
And whilst we're with Greg, 44 years ago, this weekend exactly, they performed in front of 65,000 people at the second edition of the Monsters of Rock Festival at Donington Park. It was headlined by AC/DC with Whitesnake, Blue Oyster Cult, Slade, and more. And it was a day and an era that Greg and his Blackfoot bandmates remember well. It was a huge crowd, 65,000 people there. AC/DC, Whitesnake, Slade, who were back on form as well. What was it like for you to appear at this event? What were you expecting? I remember you said you flew in low over the crowd. You had a plane hired because you were off to Germany the following day. But
right.
What was the day like? What do you remember?
I'd never seen anything like that. And when we got up and played, the trend back then, people would throw like plastic bottles at you not as an insult, compliment. We didn't know that at first, like, hey, hold on. And we found out later that if they do that, that means they really like you. But, it was a sea of people deep, as far as you could focus. Everybody was rocking. And it was a great lineup of the bands you mentioned. What an experience. And then we did that, in other countries with other festivals also. We did some with our and Def Leppard and of course Scorpions. That's the main three of the British bands. What an experience.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you were back. I mean, it went down so well, and you're touring a lot, as you've said, in the UK from 1980 onwards. And you did Reading Festival in 82, which deserves a mention because, again, this was almost all rock festival at that time. And it was headlined, or your day was headlined, by Iron Maiden with Bruce Dickinson. They were doing a number of the Beast thing here.
Right.
You came on after Dave Edmunds. Do you remember Dave Edmunds?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, we all hung out.
And did you meet Bruce?
Oh, yeah. We did shows together. That's when they had, Eddie, the big giant mechanical walking monster kind of thing. And yeah, over here.
Still there.
Yeah, I mean, here as well as in Europe. Yeah, we did a lot of shows together. I mean, we did tours together here and over in your part of the world. Great.
More I will mention was one of the big events of the 1980s at its point was the return of Deep Purple, because you were at Nebworth, which has got this incredible history and tradition.
Yeah.
Dan Skinner had played there, of course. Led Zeppelin was their final performance there, but it was all about Deep Purple on the day. So another huge event. But do you remember the weather? It rained a lot.
Well, it did in the UK a lot. That's the first thing we noticed when we went over in 1999 and from 80 on. Yeah, it did rain a lot. But we lucked out most of the time. That show with Deep Purple, that led to us doing a U.S. Canadian tour a few years later. Did like 45 shows over here.
Well, that was Greg T. Walker. You can see lots more from that feature on the website, and check out the band as well, Two Wolf, who released a debut album in the last few weeks. Lance Lopez is also in that band. So, even before you've pressed play, it's going to be good. Just a quick reminder, if you missed any of the recent editions of the show, then head over to the website, www.therockandbluesexperience.com. Everything is on there, including some exclusive content that cannot be found on any other platform. And of course, you can also head over to the YouTube channel, Facebook page, TikTok, Reddit, and Instagram as well. Back to today and Luke Morley, best known to most of you as the creative force behind one of the UK's best-loved bands, Thunder. However, with the band on hiatus as Danny Bowes gets back to full health, Luke has released a solo album. It's called Walking on Water, and he's heading out on tour shortly as well. Perfect time then to check in with Luke, which I did earlier this week. So I wanted to start with the fact that there's a few landmark numbers here this year. First of all, you celebrated your 65th birthday. Walking on Water, if I count correctly, is your 25th album of original material, not including greatest hits or the Spanish sessions. It's your fourth anniversary of recording since Black and White with Terraplane, which was the first album in 85.
Yeah.
And as it was, we were going to talk on the 18th of August, right? That was the day 35 years ago, and it was almost to the hour that you were just about to walk on stage at Donington at the Monsters of Rock Festival. So there's a lot going on there. First of all, are you aware of these anniversaries? Do these things mean anything to you?
Well, I think the Donington one, it was difficult to avoid that because it came up all over the social medias, and so it was difficult to avoid that one. I wasn't aware that it was, how many albums is it? 24?
25.
25. I had no idea of that. God. So what does that work out? So 25 since 85. Don't worry, that was 40, 25. 40. So it's over one every 2 years, right?
Yeah. And that doesn't include all of the other stuff, the lives, the EPs,
sure,
and so on. So, when you consider that you are the primary songwriter, that is a lot of material to come up with.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. Well, I suppose I just enjoy working. I love the whole process of writing and making records, and I still enjoy it as much now as I did back then. So I'm lucky. I've spent most of my adult life doing a job that I love, and I've been fortunate enough to get paid for it as well. So, yeah, I'm eternally grateful for that.
So, the joy of a solo album, enabling you to explore all of these other areas of musical influence. And this is very interesting because it gives us an insight into the influences you as a music fan have had over the years. So we're talking here about Walking on Water, the new album. So you're a big fan of Tom Petty and Nils Lofgren and James Taylor. And there is a real Tom Petty vibe about this album. There just is, isn't there? When you sit down and you put it on, you go, it's nice.
Well, it's funny. I mean, obviously, it's no secret I'm a massive Tom Petty fan. And that kind of 70s American, I suppose you would call it AOR, for want of a better phrase. So the Doobie Brothers, Steely Dan, that whole area of American music fascinated me. Because Thunder is very much rooted in British blues rock, Free, Bad Company, Rolling Stones, The Who, etc., Led Zeppelin. It's interesting to kind of look at all those kind of American influences and kind of acknowledge them, and it's deceptively simple music. I mean, it's actually quite sophisticated in that it's incredibly simple. I mean, that may sound like a kind of oxymoron, but understanding as a musician the value of simplicity and economy is something that you don't have when you're young. When you're young, you're full of energy and you want to do everything all the time. And I think that takes a lot of years to kind of embrace that less is quite often more. And I think the running through, it's a common thread running through Petty, the Doobie Brothers, those American bands. So there's a lot of space in those records. And I think I wanted to make, with this album and with the last one, I wanted to make records that felt more kind of, had more room in them, and they weren't quite as kind of, what's the word I'm looking, frantic maybe. And because, Thunder is a band, when we get in the room, we plug in and that's the noise we make. When it's the five of us, it just is. And, we all kind of get excited by that, and that's kind of why Thunder sounds like it does. But obviously working on my own is a very different thing. It means my only points of reference are personal ones. So, as you say, it's probably like a good insight into my kind of musical brain and my musical subconscious, I guess.
And people might not know as well that you had a liking for real middle-of-the-road stuff as well, like the Carpenters being one.
Absolutely. And I think anybody that grew up when I grew up, so I was born in 60, and the 70s obviously was my sort of formative teenage years, I guess. And I think everything that was on the radio in that era had some kind of influence on me, even if it was something that I completely detested, But I think the value of a great song sung by a great singer and a great arrangement always gets me. And I think the Carpenters fit into that. I think Karen Carpenter was one of the all-time greats. And, the kind of, with all the kind of, heavy rock posturing, the leather and the denim and the rips and the macho, whatever. And that all kind of melts into insignificance when you hear something as beautiful as We've Only Just Begun by the Carpenters, because it's so good. You cannot argue with quality. And it's just a wonderful thing. Yeah, I mean, I like Bread. I think they were fantastic as well. So that sort of, Glenn Campbell made some brilliant records in the 70s. And, they are schmaltzy and they're whatever and a bit cheesy and whatever, but they're beautifully made and wonderfully produced and wonderfully sung, and you know, like I said, quality is everything really.
So onto the new album in particular. Now, you've worked with some outstanding vocalists over the years. Danny, of course, being one, Pete Shoulder, Robert Palmer, of course, as well. Someone rather unkindly said of you that you can carry a tune, but not far. But the vocals, I thought, were a real standout feature here.
Yeah. I think that was me that said that. That's probably my way of kind of
self-deprecation.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I think singing is two things that affect it. One is how your voice actually naturally sounds, because there's bugger all you can do about that. Your voice sounds like it sounds. And the other is the amount of singing you do, because like everything else, like any other kind of physical activity, the more you do it, the better you get. And I think probably because I didn't pay. Because I grew up in bands with Danny, this wasn't something I ever thought about. I never thought about being a lead vocalist at all. It just didn't occur to me. And subsequently, you know, when I was working with Peter with the Union, same thing. You know, such a great singer that it just didn't occur to me at all. And then, but all the time that was going on, I was making demos at home and singing on them without paying too much attention to it. So I never kind of did what I suppose, or attempted to do, make a kind of complete vocal. It was just like, it's a guide and that'll do. That's roughly what the tune is. Purely so I could sort of demonstrate to whoever I was working with that was what it was. And it was, you know, only when I sat down with the last album that I thought, well, you know, I should sort of have a look at this and see what I can do. And I think the last album was kind of a bit more exploratory. And I think with this album, I didn't even think about singing. It's just something I did naturally because the songs are written for my voice, and the whole process felt kind of completely, you know, like it. What's the word I'm looking for? It just felt complete. It felt like the songs were right for my voice, and vice versa. And you know, to get that kind of mindset took me a little while because, as I say, it's not something I'd ever really done over the years.
I had the perfect venue actually to sit and listen to this album. So I was sat there on a beach.
Fabulous.
In Portugal, very southern Portugal, and I put it on, and you just didn't know what you were about to hear. A natural high comes on, track one, and you're thinking, this is good. And immediately, you know, you have the sun, you have your drink at the side of you, and all of a sudden, I'm thinking I'm in the US, and you're talking about the Americana, and I'm thinking in particular here about John Cougar Mellencamp, and I just thought, this sounds great. I mean, Natural High was a fantastic opening to the album and gave you an indication of what we're about to receive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that song, as soon as I finished making the demo of it, I thought this is probably a good way to open the album, because I think it's you know, we live in quite a dark world at the moment.
Yeah.
In many, many ways, and it's such a kind of cheerful, happy, upbeat song. And you know, those kind of things aren't something that with kind of rock music that, you know, they're a bit overlooked sometimes. There's a lot of darkness lyrically in rock music generally, and I just, you know, I mean, I went down that kind of wormhole myself a few years ago. The Thunder album, All the Right Noises, which was just me moaning about the world for like 50 minutes, and I didn't want to do that with this record. I just it was Natural High, kind of almost sort of set the tone for it, and I thought it would be good to do something that was not as inward looking. And you know, that's the other thing about a lot of music these days, is that it's particularly young pop artists. It's all, you know, my boyfriend did this to me. I feel like this. I'm this. I'm respected. I've got anxiety. It's all of this kind of, you know, that sort of thing. And that, hey, you know, don't get me wrong. There's always room for some of that, but all the bloody time it's a bit irritating. And I like artists that kind of have the ability to look out as well, look at the world and address it, and look at the positives, and you know, deal with the world in front of them rather than dealing with them, you know, constantly spouting kind of all about themselves and their feelings. You know, like I said, there's room for it, but not all the bloody time. It gets on your nerves, isn't it?
And that, as well as singing and writing, one of your favourite things to do is play bass, isn't it? Moving on in the album, Walking on Water was one of my favourite tracks. There's really very moody infectious rumble that opens the album with a very instantly catchy earworm of a chorus. And, it was a great track. You know, I'm psyched to see him walking on water. There's no flies on me. I mean, it was just one of those, you hear it once and immediately it's wormed its way into your psyche. You know, you can remember the chord and you can sing along to it after one go of listening. And there's that intro, which is just great.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, you know, there's a more than a tip of a hat there to John Fogerty and Creedence, because particularly with the bass line, actually, it's quite an uncommon. It's like the bass line that's very 60s. It's like a walking bass line rather than the one note pumping eights, which is the usual kind of thing. I've always been into bass parts and how bass parts affect the rhythm and the groove and the danceability of everything. The right bass note in the right place makes a massive difference. And on that time, I didn't want to be too conventional with the bass line. And like I said, I went sort of, lean towards that Creedence kind of thing. And it is quite a good groove. I mean, I had the track really before I wrote the words. Although I knew what the title was, because I started with the title, I thought, was it? And then came up with the track and thought, right, now what is it about? I know it's called Walking on Water, but what the hell is it about? So, it just it's one of those ones that musically just kind of wrote itself, really, and I just went with it.
It's funny, isn't it, how people are drawn to different tracks. When you finished the album, you said you sent it out to a few friends, and one by one, they tended to gravitate towards Breathe. Mm-hmm. Which does have the Tom Petty vibe, and what I do know here in my heart, without you, my world is going to fall apart. Mm-hmm. Is that talking about something or somebody in particular? I mean, the subject matter matches the tone of the song.
Sure, not particularly. Although I had been having a conversation with somebody around that time whose relationship had disintegrated, so. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. It just, once again, I think the chords kind of suggested the lyrics on that one, really. That one started with the music. And once again, I just went with it and followed my nose. And like I say, who's to know? When you write lyrics, you know that thing that you get with phones where if you've been talking about something, the next time you open up Google, right? Well, my brain's a bit like that. If I hear somebody talking about something, and I happen to be writing at that time, it can pop out into a lyric, and I think that's really kind of what happened. And I remember my wife saying to me when her mum died that she felt so emotional that she felt she almost couldn't breathe, and that stuck in my head. And I thought, wow, that's a very powerful thing to say. So that was kind of on my kind of various lyric notes that I keep. So it was the coming together of the two things, really, I guess.
Texas is this real slab of Americana, waitresses with guns, long way from home. Still remember Texas when I get old. Again, I mean, was this written from personal experience? Is there something that draws you to Texas and a Texan way of life? And where the hell did you see the waitresses with guns? We'll avoid it next time we go.
Well, what it was is that with Thunder, we got involved with this charity called Childline 20 years ago maybe. And we did we started off by us putting on a couple of shows and gigs and with other musicians and stuff. And then the guy that came up with the idea for the charity basically said, right, well, I think I've got this brilliant idea. I think we should go to America and ride motorbikes through all the beautiful kind of off the beaten track parts of America, and people will sponsor us. We said to them, "You're mad! Nobody will pay for that," but they did. So, and the bike group became known as the Sons of Royalty, as opposed to the Sons of Anarchy. And every year, well, I think the first trip was probably 2011, and then all the way up to COVID, there was 2 years off, and then we started again. And in 22, the trip basically started in Arizona, but most of it went through New Mexico, but most of it was in and around Texas. And so it was an incredible trip, but it was also very dark because one of the guys that was traveling with us basically got run over and died while we were out on the trip, which is awful. I can't even tell you how bad that was. And weirdly, of all the years of doing this, we'd never had an incident where somebody had come off their bike and injured themselves. And this particular evening, we had a day off and we'd stopped in a little town called Alpine in the middle of nowhere in Texas. Great little town. I had the guitar with me. We went into a bar, got the guitar out, had a sing-song. All the locals joined in, and then they took us off to this local karaoke bar. And this particular guy who was with us decided he wanted to walk back to the hotel, settle for the hotel, and he had to walk across the freeway to get to the hotel. And somebody came herring over the horizon, and he was probably a little drunk, so his judgment was probably impaired. The truck clipped him and he died a few days later, and it was awful. A few days before that was the incident with the waitress with the gun. She's in a little town called Sandhurst, right on the Mexican border. And we pulled in there, went in this cafe, and this woman, I mean, not only did she have a gun, she was a miserable woman as well. So it was like, everybody was going, yes, man, no, man, 3 legs full, man, when she was serving us. And somebody had the sort of the balls to say to her, excuse me, can I ask why you're wearing a gun? And she said, over here, she said, we don't get time to call 911 because, you know, we're overrun with like Mexicans coming over the border and the police and there's shootouts all the time. She said, there's no time to ask questions. So that's where the line about the waitress wearing a gun and in a town where they don't call 911, well, it all came from that experience. So yeah, it's a lot packed into that song. Well, I wrote loads and loads of verses for it. I had to just chop them all down to the ones that were kind of more important, I guess.
Gun to Your Head is another standout track as well. Could this be you writing a message to you? Don't be afraid of a future unknown. Trust yourself and your judgment. And if you let what you've done in the past, i.e. your history, define you, you're going to be a slave to that.
Yes, I think so. I think you're probably right. I think it's something that, you know, one of the things about, I suppose, being a musician for as many years as I have is that I think if you ever get to the point where you start repeating yourself, then you have to have a good look in the mirror and say, right, okay, what am I doing here? Am I trying as hard as I can? Am I you know, really kind of putting everything into this? And that's something I've always worried about, you know, kind of, you know, not looking back over the years and being able to see in development would bother me. So I think sometimes you've got to try things and you've got to go with it if you feel it. It might not always work, of course.
Yeah.
But whatever you do in life that's different to anything you've done before, as a result of doing it, you will learn. And that will make you, you know, wider, broader, taller and everything else, because, you know, life is about experience and it's about trying things, you know. And as soon as you kind of stop doing that, as soon as you stop moving forwards, start dwelling too much on the past, I think it's a very dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
And that's always worried me. So, yeah, maybe that is probably, I am talking to myself, I guess.
There is rock and roll on here. And there's a great track called Snakeskin Parachute. Yeah, ramped up feel to it. I mean, another favourite for me. Yeah, I have to say I did. You know, I just keep thinking, John Cougar Mellencamp.
Right.
But again, it's that up-tempo feeling, you know, and again, the message is similar, isn't it? Change what you do, looking for new directions every day, something new, and I don't fear rejection. Yeah, it's you taking a confident road into the future, but it's a reminder that rock and roll is on this album.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a guitar player who spent most of his life playing in rock bands, so there's always going to be rock on the album. Yeah, I think probably with this album, maybe because I haven't sort of written a Thunder album for 4 years, effectively. So maybe here and there, I just need to sort of scratch that particular itch and turn the guitars up a bit and rock out a bit or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen. Of course, like I said, I am a rock guitar player, so.
What is the snakeskin parachute? What is it? I mean, obviously.
Well, I suppose it's a kind of joke and it's a metaphor in that snakeskin, I think, refers to all things heavy rock, if you like the Bullet Belt. It could have been that, but it didn't scan as well.
Yeah. And
the parachute, I suppose, is me saying, well, if this solo thing all goes horribly, horribly wrong, I can parachute back out of it into my sort of comfort zone of heavy rock, and it'll be okay. If I could always go back that way and start a metal band or whatever. I don't intend to do that, and I won't, because I could never ever start another band after Thunder. I couldn't. It'd just be too difficult. So yeah, so I suppose it's that really. I'm sort of joking with myself a little.
continued the tales of the unexpected on this album. You drop into the excellent bullets. This is this for me, because this is when I was growing up. This comes straight out of late 70s punk and new wave feel to it. One of the best vocals here. Again, a real catchy tune. World's getting louder, louder won't stop. I mean, it's just a slice of punk and new wave.
Yeah, I tried to kind of imagine my 20-year-old self catapulted forward into the present day. So that would be from 1980 to now. And what would I see? What would I feel? And that's kind of how the idea came around. And once again, I wrote loads and loads of verses for this because the world's changed a lot since I was 20. And not in a good way in some areas. So I was trying to kind of make that my mindset and think about the things that I would notice and the things that would shock me. And I think probably some of the lyric hints that kind of about, being in a kind of, very futuristic car that almost drives itself, but being very protected from the outside world and all the chaos that's going on, and bombs are dropping, boots are on the ground, and there's other references to as a result of social media and the increasing power it has over us, particularly input from the Americans, how the kind of clone thing, how all young people kind of seem to look the same to me. Not all, but a lot of them all want to have this, particularly girls, the thing with the eyebrows and the hair and the lips and and all the lads have got the same barbed haircut. So these are things that if I came from 1980, I think I would notice straight away. So that's it really. It's just it's almost like just a stream of consciousness on that, based on that sort of theory. Really. You
talked earlier about the beautiful simplicity of things well done in terms of song creation in the 70s and some of the MOR stuff that was out there. Now, Don't You Cry slows things down a bit, and with the acoustic feel, and this perhaps more than any has that real Laurel Canyon style to it. It really does feel of that era. I mean, it's almost that I can feel you sitting there writing half a chorus and then running out the house over to Joni Mitchell's and saying, what do you think of this? And then she go, yeah. And then going back in and finishing the song. So that is where that song feels like it comes from.
Yeah. Are you talking about Don't You Cry, or are you talking about
Don't You Cry?
Don't You Cry, yeah. Don't You Cry is very sort of, it's got like a blues stroke jazz chord thing running through it, which is kind of, the guitar on it is, I suppose, in that kind of Gary Moore, but not quite. And so it has a kind of, once again, it's a bit of an odd song. I think it's slightly peculiar, and it's more directly bluesy than anything else on the album. And the reason that the last two tracks are that and In Your Light, just talk about In Your Light. In Your Light's just like a finger-picked acoustic, as you say, James Taylor type thing, really. And I'm a massive fan of James Taylor. And that kind of acoustic finger-picking thing, that took me a long time, so I'm not particularly good at it. So I had to almost learn it. And that's one good thing about the modern world, is that with YouTube you can teach yourself anything. So I sat down and figured out a way of kind of making it that kind of guitar part. But I think that the kind of, particularly within Your Light, which is this very, very intimate song, a lot of that is there's a lot of sort of references to the passing of time, and I suppose my relationship with my wife, and how the things that we've seen and things that have happened while we've been together. And I suppose when you get to 65, then, like I said, I know I said earlier, it's dangerous to look back. I try not to look back professionally, but I think in terms of what's happened to you in your life, you can't help but look back, because more of it is behind you than in front, unfortunately. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's okay. It's all, it's all a journey, and we have to try and enjoy as much of it as we can, even the bits where the old body starts to wake a bit and what have you. So I think it's, I suppose, to summarise what I'm trying to say, is that the older you get, the more sort of source material you have for writing. So I certainly know that with all sorts of art, both my parents are art teachers, and my father was a massive fan of Picasso. And he always thought that Picasso's best work came towards the end of his life. So that always stuck with me, because I thought, well, there's no reason why you can't keep improving as a songwriter and getting better. I mean, although, pop music, which is a completely different industry to the one I'm in now, to be honest, is very, very youth obsessed. And I think, if you look at Mick Jagger and Keith Richards or Paul McCartney or whatever, who are still doing it after all these years, that's a very, very serious choice. I mean, when you don't need the money anymore, then the only reason you would do it is if you wanted to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So, although I don't have their kind of money, I'm reasonably comfortable, and I still love doing it. God, this is a very long-winded answer to a question, but I think I still enjoy it, and all of the little, I can still find things to kind of amuse myself and keep me interested and motivated to keep doing it.
The album cover then, and the album title, what are the inspirations here? I mean, I know your longtime friend, Jason Joyce, recommended the photo studio in Spain. It's a great cover with that black ink infused water giving that mirrored effect. So what was the interest? What were you trying to get across with this album title?
Well, funny enough, I didn't have an album title until Jason suggested to me the location, and we looked at pictures of it, and I said, "This is amazing." And it's mostly used for car ads, so they'll park a car in the middle of it, and you'll get the perfect reflection of the car beneath and the mountains in the background and stuff. So it's fairly spectacular. I looked at it, and he said, "Oh yeah, the water's only like 5 millimeters deep." So I said, "Great. So that means I could walk across it, and it would look like I was walking on water. We should do a video." And he went, "Yeah, absolutely." So I said, "Okay, walking on water." So that's what kind of gave me the title for Walking on Water, and that's how the song got written. So it was a bit like the tail wagging the dog, really. It wasn't like, this is the song, let's base the artwork on that. It was the other way around. So, but that's the good thing about having a good sort of, Jason and I work together on all sorts of stuff. And I think most of the last album sleeves, oh my God, I think for a long time he's been involved with in Thunder ones or whatever. And yeah, so it's good, out of kind of all kinds of creativity, good things come, hopefully. So, it's fun.
And the suit, right? So whose idea was the suit? I mean, nice story about it. You paid 80 quid for it. Yeah. Came from China. And I did see a quote somewhere where you just said, "And no, I will not be taking it on tour." So how did you come across it?
Well, what happens, we were sort of, once we kind of decided on the concept of the photo shoot and video and the reflective surfaces, and I thought it would be brilliant if I could wear something reflective as well to make it even more kind of surreal. It might not work, but let's try it. What happened was I looked online, went online, men's silver suit, Googled it, and the only ones I could find were all very, very cheap and all kind of Chinese. And I thought, well, it's worth a punt. It's not that much money. If it doesn't work, then whatever, I'll just stick it in the bin and we'll forget it ever happened. And this suit turned up, and I put the jacket on, and it was a perfect fit, and the trousers were like a little bit tight, and like uncomfortably tight. And I thought, okay. But I looked at the jacket, I looked in the mirror, and I thought, wow, it's fantastic. Let's try and make this work. And just around the corner from where I live, there's a really, really old-fashioned seamstress. Runs a little shop on the main road. So I went and I said, "Look, I've got these trousers on. Can you help me?" And she went, "Yeah." She measured me up. She said, "I'll be about a week." And then I went back and put the trousers on, and they fitted great. So we were off to the races. And I took a kind of more, I suppose, conservative white linen suit with me as well, in case the silver thing didn't work. But we took a couple of, Polaroids of me just standing on the water with the suit on. Both thought, "Oh, it's got to be that suit." And then the next day when we did the shoot, the temperature was about 84, 85 degrees, and the suit was plastic. So it was not the most comfortable day in my life, but I think the result justifies it. And
absolutely. So on to the tour then. Any nerves here about all the singing you're going to have to do, obviously, and how much preparation are you doing for this? I mean, people who don't use their voice for a living, it's very difficult to get across them just how difficult the control aspect of this thing is. You could walk out there on night one, you're having a fantastic time, and you literally, the chains are off, you forget about it, and you just go for it. And then the second night, you're like, so what are you doing to prepare?
Well, I think, you've got to be. There's two things you have to accept if you're singing lead vocals. The first one is that you can't drink, or you can't, or very little. If you do, maybe one beer and no more. And the other thing is you need to sleep properly. And those two things are really, really, really important. Can't stress this enough. I mean, after years and years of watching Danny, seeing his preparation. The other thing is you'll always have access to steam. Fortunately, my wife is a makeup artist for a living, so she's got this sort of a range of facial saunas. So I always have one of them with me, and I always do it steam before and steam after. And while the other lads are up having a nice time on the bus, I'm in my bunk, and such is the way. I mean, I know because having watched Danny do it for years, and the rest of us will all be up telling stories and laughing and joking until 2 a.m., 3 a.m. He'd be in his bunk. But you need to do that. You need to look after it. People have paid money to see you do it, and I mean, there's some things you can't legislate for. Picking up a flu or getting an infection. Those things can happen to anybody anytime. So you can't worry about that too much. You really can't. You just got to do everything within your power to kind of, maintain, the ability to be able to do your best every night.
Yeah.
And the preparation is the other thing. It's, for about 2 weeks now, I've been pretty much singing through the whole set pretty much 4 or 5 days a week just to kind of acclimatise it. And some of that is to, build up the sort of, because your voice is a muscle like everything else and you've got to warm it up. But part of it is also to get the, because obviously when the album's recorded, the vocals and the guitar parts are all done separately.
Yeah.
Getting that kind of, rubbing your head and patting your tummy thing going on until it's second nature. And the only way to really do that is by repetition. So it's kind of the dull bit of the job, really. It's doing that, going over it and over it and over it and over it to the point of, oh my God, I've got but you do. Because that allows you, when you get on stage, to not have to worry too much about it, to not think about it too much. If you're singing and playing guitar, most of the concentration has to be on the singing. It does. So the guitar, I need to get to the point where the guitar, I know exactly what I'm doing. I also have a really good band, which is great, and Dean Howard, the other guitar player, is great, and I can get him to do quite a bit of the heavy lifting guitar-wise, which is really good. So it makes it easier. When you've got a great band, you've got to use them, and it is a really good band. So it's different. It's different to being the lead guitar player in a rock band. Being the singer who plays a bit of guitar is how you've got to look at it.
So will the show be primarily made up of, or all made up of, the solo albums, or are you going to attempt to do any Thunder, stripped down different versions, or is it just your solo material?
Tim, that would be telling. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't decided yet. I've got like a sort of squad of songs which I'm working through. There's even a couple of covers in there. I'm working through all sorts of different ideas, and when we get into rehearsal, it'll be whichever ones feel the best will do. And it may include a Thunder song, it may not. I don't know yet, but we'll see.
You've been full on as well, haven't you? Because you produced the Choir Boys album, Wardour Street, which was a real return to form for them. You've been on tour with them. I love the way you summed up the differences of life with the two bands, Thunder and the Choir Boys. We're a well-oiled machine. The Choir Boys, it was chaos. But amidst that chaos, you must have had some fun here.
Oh, yeah. I've known Spike a long time, known Spike 40 years nearly. And we always have enjoyed each other's company. The Choir Boys and Thunder, they've been on all sorts of bills together over the years. And, so it's quite a familiar thing for me, the Choir Boys. I'm a big fan of some of the songs that Spike and Guy Bailey wrote together, and so doing the album was great. It was a real challenge for me, because I just thought, well, how can we? Because after he'd been through a fairly sort of tumultuous couple of years, Spike, and it's like, well, and all the people that came together on the record, all of us wanted to kind of do what we could to kind of get him back on track musically, sort of thing, and so it was lovely to do that, and as I say, it's a very different thing with Thunder. I had to put my kind of Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood hat on and look at it that way, if you like.
To take you back to the days in Wardour Street when you used to hang out, you know, the Marquee Club, the San Moritz and the Intrepid Fox.
Exactly, all of that stuff. And, you know, it's great. And doing the shows has been great fun as well because, you know, it's much, I think, closer to the original concept of the Choir Boys. There's a Spike that has told me many times that him and Guy Bailey only ever really wanted to have one guitar player. And it was Phil Mogg who talked them into having two guitar players. And he said, oh, this was in, you know, 89, 88. And Phil apparently said, oh, you need two guitar players. That's how bands sound these days. You can't just do it with one. So since, obviously, we made the Wardour Street album, the touring, there's only me playing guitar. So, and it does sound quite different. It sounds a lot more open. And I get that, just like Spike says, that was their original concept. It was like to have a band like the Faces with just one guitar and a player and that kind of loose-limbed rock and roll thing. So, yeah, it's great fun. As I said, it is chaotic, but that's their world and that's the Choir Boys. That the whole concept is chaotic. It's a bit like herding cats. Why would you want to herd cats? They don't want to be herded. So Choir Boys is the same sort of thing, you know.
So lastly, Thunder, as we know, Danny's on the road to recovery. It is a slow process, but he's been on great form. He's been out on the road recently. You went down to see him. So is the plan just still to take it day by day?
Absolutely. We can't, you know, we you know, I know that he would like to sing again and, you know, obviously all the rest of us in the band would like to do it again. You know, I mean, Ben's had his health issues as well, you know. So I guess it's just a matter of if Danny feels like he can do it or wants to do it. He wants to do it, sorry, I'll rephrase that. He feels like he's capable of doing it as well as he wants to do it. That's the thing. Because he's a real perfectionist. And I think if he felt like he couldn't do the sort of, I hate the word legacy justice, then I don't think that he would want to do it, which I completely understand. So it's really up to him. And the rest of us would all love to do it. I think we, as a band, I mean, it's an interesting thing, you know, and obviously as you worked out your stats earlier, I think there's 14 Thunder studio albums, is that right?
Yeah.
So I think if he felt up to it again and wanted to do it, you know, felt he could do it justice, and we did it, and we could do it without making a record. I think we could go out and tour and just do like a greatest hits tour, or maybe we could do all of Laughing on Judgment Day, whatever. I think there's all sorts of things to do. Because when you have that much material over the years, you can cut it any way you want. So, you know, I mean, the main thing is that he is. I saw him on Saturday, and he's looking great. He's looking really well. He's in a good place mentally now. You know, I think that spoken word tour that he did was very good for him. It got him on the stage in front of people again, and. You know, because when something like that happens to you, obviously it's a massive blow to your confidence physically. And so, you know, he's having to kind of rise up and deal with all those kind of challenges as well. So
when I spoke to him a couple of months ago, this was on the eve of the tour, he was very, very candid. And he just said, look, I said to the guys, I was quite open. If you want to replace me, I'm fine with that. Now, I mean, you guys have been best friends for 5 decades and more. Could you ever foresee a time where Thunder would take to the stage without him, with a different vocalist?
Well, I think that's something that is not, it's not even something that I would want to contemplate. I think the time for that question is if he says, guys, I'm sorry, I can't do it anymore. Then we'll have a conversation amongst the rest of us. Do we want to do it with somebody else? But until that happens, then it's not even a question. And if Danny did say, I can't do it anymore, and we had the discussion, I really don't know how that would go. I think, you know, like I said, it's hard to even conceptualise that position because until he's kind of in a position where he feels like he just can't do it anymore, then I don't know. And I don't know how I would feel about it personally either. There's so many issues that would bring forth that it's hard to be able to objectify it at all, really, at this moment. You know, we'll see.
And lastly, then the future for you after this. So we've got the album has just come out. It's been very well received. The tour is to come in the next month or so.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the plan then when you return from the tour? You're going to be looking to again work on more solo albums, or you're going to get back with Spike, or what are your plans?
No, well, I don't actually, to be honest, I don't have any yet because it's been a very intense year work-wise. So the first thing I'm going to do after the tour is have a little rest, a little break, and then I'm going to think about that because I mean, one of the other things that I've done over the last year is I've produced a band called Muddy Brook. It's a really interesting record that comes out next year, and I do like working with young bands and young people because I enjoy the process anyway. But you always learn something when you work with people. So I'm keen to kind of keep that up, and I'd like to sort of going forward. The only thing I know is that it would be great every 18 months to work on an album with somebody else, because obviously the production role is a very different thing. And I love doing it. It's great fun. And like I said, I always learn something when I do it. So definitely that. I'm talking to a couple of bands at the moment about that. We'll see if anything comes from those conversations. And obviously what's been great about the Choir Boys is it's got me out of the house. It's got me playing again on stage. So that's great. And I'm really enjoying that. So I don't want to sit in my ass in the studio all the time. Obviously I write, I'm quite prolific as a writer, so I will obviously be writing all the time, but quite what for and why, I don't know. I'll see how the tour goes. I might even go out and try and do some festivals next summer as a solo. But we'll see. All those things are kind of, I'm thinking about and talking about at the moment. And, I want to get this tour done out the way, and then we'll sit down and have a more kind of constructive conversation about the future.
Luke Morley, the album Walking on Water is out now, and head over to his website where you can buy it and check ticket availability for the upcoming tour. And that is it for today. Coming up in the next few weeks, we're going to be talking to some great guests. Damon Johnson, currently with Lynyrd Skynyrd and formerly with Alice Cooper, Thin Lizzy, Brother Kane, the Black Star Riders. He's going to be joining us, plus Dave Ellefson and Jeff Scott Soto. They've just released Unbreakable, which is one of the best hard rock albums you will hear this year. Once again, if you want to catch up with all of the content, then head to the website www.therockandbluesexperience.com or on YouTube and Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For the moment then, from me, Tim Caple, until next time, bye-bye for now.